We all know the story. It's practically wired into our brains from middle school. The greatest empire in human history got too big, got too corrupt, and eventually crumbled under the weight of barbarian invasions. The lights went out, Europe plunged into the Dark Ages, and humanity spent the next 1,000 years just trying to remember how to build a decent road. But honestly, what if that entire timeline was just erased? What if the Roman Empire never collapsed? What if, right now, you were sitting in a province of a global 2,000-year-old superpower? I'm not talking about guys running around in metal armor today. I'm talking about a highly advanced, unbroken civilization that didn't have to hit the reset button on human progress. If Rome survived, your life, your technology, and the very map of the world would be unrecognizable. Let's look at exactly how this would change everything. First, we have to figure out how they actually pull this off. By the 4th century, Rome was splitting in half. The West was falling apart, and the East was holding on. To survive, they needed a miracle, or at least a few incredibly competent emperors in a row.
Imagine a timeline where the Romans figure out a peaceful assimilation system for the migrating Germanic tribes, turning potential enemies into loyal citizens and soldiers. Instead of fracturing, they stabilize the borders. The crisis passes. Now they have something incredibly rare in human history: absolute, undisturbed stability across an entire continent. And when human beings aren't constantly worried about getting invaded, they start inventing things, fast. This brings us to the biggest change: technology. A lot of people don't realize that the Romans actually had the blueprint for the steam engine. A Greek engineer named Hero of Alexandria invented it in the 1st century. But the Romans just used it as a toy. They had cheap slave labor, so they didn't feel the need to build machines. But in our unbroken timeline, as the empire grows, slavery naturally phases out due to economic shifts and border stability. Suddenly, they need machines to do the heavy lifting. The Industrial Revolution doesn't happen in 18th century Britain. It happens in 9th century Rome.
Think about the math here. If they industrialize 1,000 years earlier than we did, where does that put them today? By the year 1200, they have electricity. By 1500, they're splitting the atom. And today, humanity wouldn't just be arguing on the internet. We would be a multi-planetary species. The first man on the moon wouldn't have planted an American flag. He would have planted the golden eagle of the legions. But what about the rest of the world? Does Rome conquer the whole planet? Probably not. Empires have a natural limit to how much land they can actually control before logistics become a nightmare. What's more likely is that Rome reaches the Atlantic and stops until they develop transoceanic ships. When they cross the Atlantic and discover the Americas, it wouldn't be a disorganized colonial rush like in our history. It would be a calculated, state-sponsored expansion. But here's the twist. With centuries of diplomatic experience, maybe they don't wipe out the native populations. Maybe they establish massive, lucrative trade networks with the Aztecs and the Incas, integrating them into the global Roman economy.
The world wouldn't be divided into nearly 200 different countries. You'd likely have 3 or 4 mega empires: the Roman Empire in the west, a unified Chinese empire in the east, and heavily modernized allied states in the Americas. No World War I, no World War II, just a delicate, highly advanced global chess game. So, what would your life look like in this world? Honestly, it might be pretty great, but heavily regulated. The Roman legal system was intense, and after 2,000 years of refinement, bureaucracy would be an absolute beast. Latin would be the undisputed global language of business, science, and the internet. English wouldn't even exist. Entertainment? Gladiatorial games wouldn't survive a modern moral code, but imagine the scale of Roman sports today. We're talking about massive, globally televised spectacles in mega stadiums that make the Super Bowl look like a high school game. Chariot racing, but with high-speed hovercrafts pushing 300 miles per hour.
Religion would look completely different too. Instead of a few dominant monotheistic religions, you might have a highly evolved, modernized form of polytheism, a society that blends ancient Stoic philosophy with cutting-edge quantum physics. It would be a culture that respects logic, order, and the state above all else. A world where the Roman Empire never fell isn't just a world with older buildings. It's a world where humanity didn't waste 1,000 years fighting in the mud. We would be curing diseases, exploring the stars, and living in a highly structured, unified global society.
But it also means a world with zero privacy. A world where the state sees everything, controls everything, and demands absolute loyalty. An empire that lasts 2,000 years doesn't do it by being gentle. It does it by being ruthlessly efficient. So I leave it to you. If you had the choice to press a button and swap our timeline for the unbroken Roman timeline, would you do it? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this thought experiment, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the history that almost was. I'll see you in the next one.